Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Monday, December 9th, 2024, 3 p.m. land use hearing. As is our tradition, we shall begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us as you're able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all very much. My name is John Kafalis, Commissioner residing in District 1, currently the Chair of the Board of County Commissioners, joined by my colleagues, Kristen Stevens, residing in District 2, and Jody Shedek McNally in District 3. Behind us, we have Lindsay from the Clerk and Recorder's Office, who is taking notes and recording the meeting. Of course, it's a public meeting being broadcast. Across the way, we have Christine Luckeson, one of our assistant county attorneys, and then a variety of folks with our community development department. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Jenny, who can introduce her colleagues and then give us a little bit of the procedural stuff that is helpful for folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am joined up here by Danielle Rymanis, J.C. McNulty. We have Christina Scrutchins. We have Ryan Oswaldendell, which I probably mispronounced. I apologize. Across the way, joining us from the Health Department, we have Ashton Brodall. We have Senior Planner Michael Whitley. We have from the Health Department as well, Leah Schneider. David Pringle joining us from Engineering. We have our SIPR Director, Leslie Ellis, and then Samantha Lasher, another of our planners. So with that, we respectfully request that all members of the audience silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and hearing procedure instructions, which are located on the wall just to the right of the hearing room entrance, and also posted at the website larimer.org/BOCC/commissioners-meetings if you're joining us virtually. Please wait to speak until recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Please make all comments to the Board of County Commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone available if needed. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide the spelling of your name if it's unique. Please speak directly into the microphone so that remote participants may hear. Upon request, we do have assisted listening devices available for the hearing impaired. For those on Zoom, attendees will be muted until they're recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or request a consent item be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 on your phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you very much. So let me add a few additional comments, and also I'll go through the list of items that are on the agenda. The first item is actually a consent agenda item, Choice Organics Transfer of Membership Interest, file number 13-G0257. And then there are three discussion items. The first discussion item is the Heslop appeal, file number 24-Zone 3651. The next item on the discussion agenda is a consideration for our manufactured housing park preservation, MHP-P, zoning district file number 24-Code 0279. And the third discussion item is regarding our proposed Larimer County water master plan, file number 24-Code 0280. So three discussion agenda items and one consent agenda item. Very quickly, consent agenda items are typically, there's typically not a staff presentation. The applicant gets to speak, and then there's public comment and so forth. It's typically something that is routine in nature, administrative nature. As far as we know, there's no perceived controversy. So that is a consent agenda item. And in a moment, we'll look at what is listed on our agenda. I should also say that commissioners are able to pull something off the consent agenda, or someone from the public wishes to do so, they are also within their purview to do that. If that occurs, then there would be a presentation and all of the rest. Regarding discussion items, there's a full hearing. There's a presentation from staff. The applicant has an opportunity to make their case. There's an opportunity for public comment, a rebuttal to that or response to that public comment, deliberation from the commissioners, and then we do our best to make informed decisions. And throughout that process, we can certainly ask questions of staff and other folks. So with that in mind, thank you for listening. Regarding the first item, consent agenda item, Choice Organics transfer of membership interest, file numbers 13-GO257. Do either of my colleagues wish to remove that from the consent agenda? Thank you, nor do I. Let's see, Christina. Well, first of all, is there anyone here present, forgive me, anyone here present that wishes to pull that item off the consent agenda? Okay. Now, Christina, is there anyone online who is interested in this particular item and may wish to remove it from the consent agenda?
There are no attendees online.
Very good. Then I will ask, let's see, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, would you be kind enough to offer the motion, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the items on the consent agenda subject to the conditions in the staff reports and further move to authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Proper motion. Any comments, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. If anyone is here for that one, you are more than free to go. I hope you have a nice afternoon. Okay, we'll now move on to public hearing discussion items. The first item is the HESLEP, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that properly, the HESLEP appeal, file number 24-Zone 3651. And we have our presenter will be J.C. McNulty, I believe.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yes, this is the presentation for the HESLEP ALA appeal, file number 24-Zone 3651. The subject property is located at 6699 Savvy Place in Fort Collins. That is approximately 3/4 of a mile southwest of the intersection of County Road 21 and West County Road 60E. The owner and applicant for this case is Daniel HESLEP. This property is located in the open zoning district. It is 35.22 acres in size. And this request is an appeal to 4.3.7 B1 and B2 of the Land Use Code, which will allow him to use a well to supply an accessory living area, although the property is located within the Northern Colorado Water Association service area. Here is an aerial view of the property. It is currently developed with a 3,200 square foot garage, which contains an 800 square foot apartment that is to be converted to the accessory living area. And then the owner would like to construct a new single family home. There also is another garage on the property that's just shy of 2,000 square feet. That is shown in red on screen. That is not a dwelling. That contains a garage, a game room, and a wet bar. On screen, you will see the two portions of the code that are being appealed today. And that is one, that the development cannot physically be served by a public community water system whose distribution system is within 1 mile, and that the development is outside any existing or planned water district or water service area. This is the review criteria for the appeal. Staff has found that the request meets all of the criteria on screen. We can return to this if needed. And we are recommending approval of this appeal subject to the conditions listed on screen. Thank you.
Thank you, J.C. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments for our planner? Nor do I. I guess you're getting off easy at the moment. So then moving along, we can invite, I don't know if there's someone here. Daniel, would you like to come up and, you would not? Oh, I think we understand what is before us here. So the applicant chooses not to present. At this time, we would open it up for public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this particular proposal? Christina, is there anyone online who
There-
wishes to speak to this proposal?
There are no attendees online.
Boy, we're on a bit of a roll so far. Thank you, Christina. Okay, then we'll close public comment. There's no need for rebuttal since there wasn't any public comment. At this time, I'll bring it back to the commissioners in the event you have any additional questions. I mean, the issue at hand is the ability to use well water for an accessory living area that folks would live in order to build a bigger structure, primary residence that has been explained in our packet. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments you want to offer? You want to begin the deliberation then? Oh, do
I
you
have
have
a
a question? I'm sorry,
question.
forgive me.
And I hate to pull the applicant, or maybe the staff can answer this. I know it was kind of mentioned in here why, but I just wanted to kind of expand and clarify why well versus, connecting. Is it just the water tap fees? And I just kind of want to expand and understand a little bit more in depth than what's on paper.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to elaborate. Mr. Heslop applied for approval for an accessory living area back in April of this year. And just as we were kind of in the final stages of completing his application, we received notification from the Northern Colorado Water Association that they had rescinded their ability to provide a tap for this accessory living area. And so we had to look into other options for water to supply this accessory living area. Yeah, the well on the property is already existing, so as you see in the packet, there are existing water quality data and production data to show that it's functional. The existing water tap on the property will be moved to the new primary residence once it's constructed, and then the well will be used to supply the accessory living area.
That's helpful. That's what was my understanding. Just wanted to be clarification and make sure my understanding was correct. Thank you.
And if I can just add one quick additional bit of information, the Northern Colorado Water Association as a whole changed their policy recently and was providing taps to accessory living areas, but not new dwellings. And since then, they have decided they can no longer provide those accessory living area taps as well. So it's a policy change on their part.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think we've seen a lot of that recently, so I appreciate that that extra information. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Of course, Commissioner. Anything from you, Commissioner Stevens? I'll just mention very quickly, and then we'll start with Commissioner Stevens regarding the deliberation part of this, and that is, the issue at hand is the appeal to two sections of our land use code, and there are various review criteria that have been indicated that have been met, that if this is approved, then it still has to go through an administrative review process, I believe. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. So with that in mind, Commissioner Stevens, would you like to begin the deliberation phase, please?
Yeah, I'll support this application. It's, I think that a lot of people in this area have found themselves in a very difficult position. Luckily this one is a little more straightforward with the well being there, and but yeah, I support this for the reasons given in our staff report. It meets all the criteria. Staff certainly supports it, so I will be supporting the appeal. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Shattuck McNally.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll probably repeat some of this, but I'll figure I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. I do believe it meets all the criteria. I appreciate staff's thoroughness and looking into this, and then updating that we have some changes with other associations and their policies, and so that's going to probably provide us some more opportunities to have these challenges come forward again. I think it is a little more simpler since there's already been a well on the property, and I do appreciate all of the conditions that were added and focused on, and so that makes me feel comfortable with the added conditions and the other steps that needs to go forward to support this application going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioners. I don't need to belabor. I believe the review criteria have been met. We know what the issue is at hand, and so I too will support the application. And with that, Commissioner Stevens, I believe it's your turn. Would you offer the proper motion?
I will, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Heslop appeal, file number 24, zone 3651.
And actually, it doesn't say it on our paper, but I believe it should reference the conditions of approval that are on page 96.
Yeah, I would add that
Thank you.
that we would be approving the appeal with the conditions of approval that are listed in our staff report.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you for pivoting there, Commissioner. Any further discussions, colleagues? If there's a motion on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 3-0. Good luck, Daniel. Good luck with your work. Have a nice day. Oh, well. I was just basking in the moment. We'll move on to our third discussion item. Thank you. Our second discussion item, regarding the proposed zoning district manufactured housing park preservation. Let's see. We have Danielle and her team. When you're ready, we will listen.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just pulling this up on the screen above. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Commissioners, for this meeting today at our land use hearing. We were at Planning Commission recently, a few weeks ago, which they had recommended for approval, and so we are bringing this forth here today. This is the Larimer County Manufactured Housing Park Preservation Zoning District. My name is Danielle Rymanis. I'm a Planner 1 here with Larimer County Community Development, and next to me is Samantha Lasher, who is a Planner 2 with Community Development. All right. So the purpose and the goals of this new zoning district is really to kind of create a new zoning district where manufactured housing is the primary use. It's really to maintain affordability as well as preserve natural alternative housing options and strong communities within. It's really intended for existing mobile home parks or manufactured housing parks, because many of them are within other zones besides our current MHP, and I'll get more into that. So the goals of this project are to create a new tool. There's a plethora of tools out there. This is just one option in order to preserve these existing housing parks. It encourages manufactured housing as the primary use on this zoning district, kind of limiting some of the other uses and the other potentials on the property. And it reduces the likelihood of park closures due to redevelopment and protects residents from being displaced, as even if an owner were to sell the property, chances are the use would still need to be a manufactured housing park. Okay. So this really came out of alignment with the county's goals, especially as they relate to the comprehensive plan, the 2019 comprehensive plan. There were kind of two identified pieces, housing needs and housing diversity. And this one kind of targets both of them, so that it, in the first part, it develops initiatives that preserve current attainable housing stocks. A manufactured housing park is a really large and it's a current attainable housing stock, and so the goal is to kind of maintain and preserve that. Secondly, the housing diversity It's kind of looking to create flexibility and ensure land use code provides opportunities for diversity, of which a manufactured housing park could be, modular homes. And it also, there's intention to work with municipalities to kind of create a regional thing. Just for any folks listening, Fort Collins, the city of Fort Collins did this recently in the last few years. They have approved a similar sort of preservation zoning district of which their mobile home parks are within. With this, each zone on the Larimer County Land Use Code kind of has an intent statement associated that just shows the intention of what this zone is for. And so I'm just going to read this out loud so we're all on the same page here. The MHP district is designed to protect parcels with existing manufactured housing parks in order to preserve natural alternative housing opportunities. This district is intended to support existing manufactured housing communities as the primary residential use and allow for other complementary use which primarily serve residents of manufactured housing communities. I think that's a good kind of summary of everything I've presented thus far. So there's two phases to this project. Right now, we are in phase one. Depending on kind of how today goes, we'll near the end of phase one. So simply, it's just the adoption of the new zoning district. There will be no rezoning, there'll be no change of zoning in this phase one. It's really just doing an inventory of what's already out there, how many parks are within Larimer County, how many are unincorporated, what is their current zoning. There's community outreach. We had 2 webinars. One for the owners, one for the residents, one was translated into Spanish. We had an email address that anyone could utilize to contact us staff. We also had a website that posted all this information. We had a work session with the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners in October to kind of seek direction. And as I've mentioned before, if adopted, no properties will be directly affected or rezoned with this phase. Nor have we done any evaluation of building or zoning compliance issues that might currently exist. This is really just to create that new zone. Phase 2, 2025 and beyond, that's when we'd actually, if adopted, that's when we'd start looking to potentially rezone through legislative means. So a further evaluation of phase 2 to come. We are not presenting anything on phase 2 today. Just know that phase 1 is simply the adoption. And I'm going to end on a slide that talks a little bit about the background of manufactured housing parks in Larimer County. So there's 33 parks within Larimer County's jurisdiction. So these are the unincorporated areas. They're not in any cities per se. They're on the, some people call them the outskirts, but the unincorporated area. We do already have a MHP zone, as you can see, manufactured housing park, and there's about 13 parks within the zone. But then as you go kind of down that axis, you'll notice that we have 10 zones within the O open, which the O open zone does not actually allow for mobile home parks, and so this is considered a non-conforming use. You have RR2, UR1, and we have a lot of miscellaneous zones that contain manufactured housing parks. And currently, out of all of these zoning districts, the MHP one, that first one, is the only one that does allow for manufactured housing parks as its permitted principal use. So the rest are non-conforming. This is potential to bring them up to use, to conforming use, to legal conformance with their use. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to Sam, and she'll wrap us up.
All right, thank you, Danielle. So with the adoption of this new zoning district, there are a number of proposed land use code changes. So I'm going to go over just a few of them. So right now, the biggest change that's proposed is with this new zoning district, it would really limit the number of allowed principal, accessory, and temporary uses. And the intent of this is really to focus on those uses that really support the residents and help to preserve the communities by limiting redevelopment potential. So there's very few or no commercial or industrial uses that would be allowed in this new zoning district. So some of the uses that you can see on screen are just some of the proposed uses that staff would allow in the zoning district. So some of these uses include manufactured housing parks, daycare centers, wireless telecommunication facilities, community gardens, those uses that support the residents, as well as a few accessory and temporary uses as well. The full list of proposed uses can be found in Attachment A of your packet. The next change would be we would match lot and building standards to the existing manufactured housing park zoning district with this new zoning district. So lot and building standards include property line setback requirements, minimum lot size requirements, as well as maximum building height standards. And then lastly, there are a few changes that we are not proposing to make but would carry forward with this new zoning district. So currently, there's a section in our land use code that's called Manufactured Housing Park Use Specific Standards. Some of these standards include landscaping, parking, street design standards, density. These standards are applied when a new park comes into the county to build, or if there's an existing park that would like to expand or add new units, these standards could be applied. So if there is an existing park that would like to expand or add new units in the future, staff would review and apply these standards accordingly on a case-by-case basis. And so none of these standards would be changing at this time. And then lastly, the code currently has definitions for manufactured housing park and manufactured home. These are also not changing and would carry forward with the new zoning district. So overall, what are the benefits of adopting this new zoning district? So the main one is that it would help to preserve this one type of natural alternative housing opportunity. By limiting allowed uses in the zoning district, it would help to limit that redevelopment potential that could occur in the future. That would help to preserve these communities and to prevent displacement and help to maintain stability for residents, many of whom who have lived in these communities for years or even decades. Another benefit, as Danielle had mentioned, is it directly addresses goals within our comprehensive plan, specifically related to housing needs and also housing diversity. Also, as Danielle mentioned, there are various parks in the community that are currently non-conforming with regards to use. So by rezoning these parks to this new zoning district, it would bring them into conformance in terms of use. And then lastly, this project would really increase public awareness and support of these communities and their residents. And ultimately, this is just one tool in the toolbox to help support these communities, but staff finds that it's really a positive step in the right direction. So as Danielle had mentioned, this item was on the discussion agenda for the November 20th Planning Commission hearing. There was various discussion and questions that were asked of staff. There was no public testimony during this hearing. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend approval of the adoption of the zoning district 5-2. Those who were in favor of the adoption did highlight the importance of preserving these communities and did find that it was a positive first step forward, although they did acknowledge that they wish the project had done a little bit more. And then those planning commissioners that were opposed to the project felt that adding a new zoning district may add unnecessary complexity without sufficiently addressing affordable housing challenges like increased rents, etc. The full discussion for the Planning Commission hearing can be found in the video link that was provided as part of the packet. Also, we just wanted to remind you of the attachments that are part of the packet. Danielle and I are happy to answer any questions related to these attachments. And ultimately, staff does recommend approval of the adoption of the Manufactured Housing Park Preservation Zoning District, file number 24 code 0279. And we do have a suggested motion on the screen for the commissioners to consider. Thank you. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Samantha and Danielle. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments, observations, Commissioner?
No, at this time I don't. Thank you. Just want to thank staff for all their work.
Okay, Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah. Thank you, Samantha and Danielle. Really appreciate the presentation because you condensed a lot of work and a lot of months of work and a lot of discussions into really a great summary of how that things went down. Can you elaborate on some of the planning commissioners who wanted to go further? I apologize that I did not watch the video, and so can you tell me what they wish this would have done? Do they wish more for the actual zoning district, or are they concerned about implementation?
I can answer that. Thank you for the question, Commissioner. There weren't necessarily any comments on expanding what we had proposed or adding new uses or any kind of conversation there. They just, we talked a lot about the point of this affordability piece and how this project doesn't necessarily get to affordability, and they would like to see more in that regard. But that's a bit out of scope for this specific project because we can't really touch that through zoning.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Commissioner. One question I have is with regard to accessory uses. I looked at that list and I'm curious why we would limit backyard poultry. I would think those kinds of activities would be conducive, to building community and self-sufficiency.
I'm just pulling up the table so we can put it on screen.
Oh, it's the table. Thank you, Samantha.
So as you can see on screen, this is the table of accessory uses, and you can see highlighted in red would be where the new zoning district would lie. And we actually are proposing to allow for accessory backyard poultry, accessory apiaries, which is beekeeping, a farm stand. So we are proposing to allow those as accessory uses. Of course, if there are any conflicts with the HOA or the community group in charge of the manufactured housing park, there could be some limitations, but we are proposing to allow those uses.
Yes, I thank you very much, Samantha. I turned it around, perhaps. Regarding the experience, I know we work with the city of Fort Collins to, lessons learned from their experience. Can you give us a bit of an, even though it's not directly related to what's before us, any lessons learned from the city of Fort Collins regarding establishing this zoning district, and as we move into phase 2 with discussions about rezoning and all of that?
Sure, if you give us just 1 minute, we can pull up some notes from them. We did have 2 meetings with the city of Fort Collins, so I can pull those up.
While Sam's pulling that up, I'll talk about some high-level things that I think need to be further explored in phase 2 if moving forward. Those are the lessons learned, is how to appropriately address which might need rezoning, which maybe we do not want to rezone for certain reasons. But when we talked to some of the staff over there, a conversation that kept coming up is when new parks come online, what do they zone those as? If the applicant looks to rezone, would they go with this new preservation district or not? So they've kind of rezoned the properties they're going to, and now they're looking towards the future on how to handle that. But I know Sam will probably add on to this.
And actually, as Samantha pulls that up, and you're reminding me that I did read in the comments from some of the park owners that one of the comments was around, well, maybe we should be focusing more on making it easier to create new manufactured housing communities. And again, I recognize that that's not part of this, but I'm wondering what you all think about that. It seems like that would be something we should think about. How can we make it easier for new manufactured housing communities to be built? Or expanded, perhaps?
So I won't address manufactured housing parks specifically. I'll let Sam do that. But we are looking at ways to make affordable housing more efficient and streamlined in our processes. So we're looking at overall affordability and ways to provide faster approvals and quicker processes. And I'll let Sam add. Thanks, Jenny. That's helpful. And to address your question, Commissioner Kavalis, yeah, I do think that could be absolutely something that staff looks into, sort of maybe as a separate project. One thing that we could look at is some of those Article 3 standards that I mentioned that are applied to new parks coming in. That could help streamline the process or make it easier for new parks to come into the county. But that could just be one piece that we look at.
And to go back to your first question about follow-up from the city of Fort Collins, so as I mentioned before, we did meet with Ryan Mounts. He led the effort for the new zoning district in the city of Fort Collins. I met with him in 2023, and then we met with him just recently in November. And just a summary, so they adopted their new zoning district at the end of 2020. And I don't remember how long it took, but I do believe it was at least a year. For the project. They said at the time there was a lot of momentum and support for the project because it occurred during the pandemic, and there was such a need for affordable housing. So it was really top of mind. There was a lot of support from the community, support from city council. They did hear from a lot of residents and community groups who supported the effort. They did also hear from some owners. Some park owners, they didn't necessarily want to sell the parks or redevelop them, but they were nervous about the idea of being legislative rezoned and losing any sort of that development potential. However, now that it's been a few years since the zoning district has been adopted and implemented, he did note that there have been no concerns with owners that have been brought up in these last few years. He speculates that that's because there's generally not a lot of turnover in general with the selling of these parks. But it sounds like it's ultimately been a success. He did also mention that there are 12 existing parks within the city of Fort Collins limits, and they only ended up legislative rezoning 9 of them. I do believe there were a few parks that they ultimately decided were not appropriate to rezone. But they did do a blanket legislative rezone for 9 of them. So that's something that, as staff, we would be probably looking at the parks maybe on a case-by-case basis rather than necessarily rezoning all 33 of them. But that's something we could explore more with Phase 2.
Thank you, Samantha. That's very helpful. And I do want to thank you also for, you do a very good job of talking close to the mic, and so I can hear you really well. I appreciate that very much, actually.
Sure.
I had another question, but it's more curiosity, and I don't want to take up anyone's time. Maybe offline, I'm curious. So I don't have anything else. Colleagues, do you have anything? No? Then I believe we have an opportunity for public comment. Let's see. We don't. Very good. Thank goodness. So welcome. If you would be kind enough to come on up to the mic. You have about 3 minutes. Please identify yourself for the record. If there's a need to spell your name, that would help. And we're glad you're here, actually.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a map.
And what is your name, by the way?
I'm sorry.
That's
Tiffin Vaughn.
Oh.
First name Tiffin, Tiffin, and last name Vaughn, Tiffin Vaughn.
Thank you.
And I live North Fort Collins, so 80524.
Thank you.
Yeah. I brought a map with me just as a brief illustration. This is just an example.
Thanks.
So I'm in support of the MHP Preservation Zoning District in the Larimer County Land Use Code. And since one of the reasons it has been created is to improve conditions in these communities, I think it's also important to include that there be protections from introducing any heavy industry nearby. I think I heard Sam mention something about no industry to be taking place. And by this I mean, this is just an example of the map that I brought.
And Tiffin, forgive me.
Sure.
Respectfully, if you're going to be referencing a specific proposal.
Mhm.
As I look at your map, I would ask that you stay away from that because we will have a hearing on that down the road,
Mhm.
and we need to make sure that we don't talk about it outside of the hearing.
Okay. I
Thank
don't
you.
need to reference the specific. It can
Thank you.
be a generic, any heavy
Thanks,
industry.
Stephanie.
But living on the north end of town
Thank you.
within, a various short radius of distance, there is 5 mobile home parks that I just wanted to bring attention to in terms of health concerns and the quality of the air that these people are going to be breathing. Many manufactured home parks rely in the summer on swamp coolers, which pull in directly air from the outside. And so not only but air pollution, but of course noise and light pollution as well from heavy industry. This general area has been identified already existing under some environmental burden, and it did score a 94 out of 100, a higher number being worse on the Colorado EnviroScreen that came out from the EPA. As well as this past summer, there were some geographical heat maps that were produced, that were published, that in conjunction with the Colorado EnviroScreen indicated that this area exists under environmental burden already. So I just thought that would be something that should need to be considered too. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you for the map. Is there anyone else here in person who wishes to offer public comment regarding the proposed zoning change? How about online, Christina?
We do have one attendee online.
You said we have one online?
We do, yes, sir.
Please.
We don't have a hand raised. So this is a reminder that if you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand function.
Thanks, Jenny.
No hands raised.
What?
No hands raised.
That person is no longer there?
The person does not have their hand raised to speak.
Oh,
Oh,
now
we now
they
have
do.
a raised hand.
Now they do. Good prompt.
Kara Mahoney,
Yes, hello, Carol?
if you could please unmute yourself, you are allowed to speak, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And actually, I am just listening in because I'm a City of Fort Collins employee, and in neighborhood services, I work with mobile home parks. So I'm just listening and appreciate the background that we got from the staff, and just enjoy listening to this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else, Christina, online? Raise hand feature or *9.
There's no one else online.
Okay. Then we'll close public comment, express appreciation to at least the one person who took the time to be here and express their opinion about this matter. Let's see. I think at this time we can deliberate and offer the motion. Let's see, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, any comments or thoughts?
Are we starting deliberations or just?
Yeah, deliberation, unless you have questions.
I don't have questions.
Deliberations, sure.
Okay. First,
Did I miss
Yeah.
something?
No, I just had never mind.
Oh, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I will ask a question, and I apologize, Commissioner Shattuck McNally. I just want to ask one question before we start deliberations, is that when we're talking about, and I want to thank Tiffin for coming to speak, when we're talking about zoning, and I agree, there are environmental justice situations to consider, do we have rules in any kind of sense around adjacencies of so like, could a heavy industrial be near near residential at all? I mean, are there any kind of rules around that, or what does that look like? And I'm thinking about, when we did the oil and gas regulations, we had some conversations about having higher setbacks from multifamily. I don't think we included mobile home parks in that, but I guess I'm wondering, are there any rules about adjacencies with within zoning sort of areas? Because I think that does get at, we see across the state things like Suncor where there's, really heavy industry adjacent to residential, which really causes significant health problems. So I'm wondering, is there any way to address that in our code?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. So there's a couple of pieces to that. So in theory, there could be a commercial or industrial zoned property next to a residentially zoned property. I don't know how often that occurs, but it does exist in the county. Like you said, if there are oil and gas wells on the property, there are setback requirements from residential uses. There are also buffering standards. If there are, for example, residential and agricultural uses next to each other, or industrial and residential. It does matter too if there's a new industrial use coming in next door to an existing residential use, or vice versa. But those types of standards are evaluated during the appropriate planning process. And I know that Leah Schneider and Ashton Brodall with the Health Department, they do take a look at those impacts, especially as they relate to air quality, noise, things like that as well. So there are standards in place to evaluate those impacts.
Okay. So there could be some that exist currently, but if something were to come in new, whether it was residential near industrial or vice versa, there would be a thorough kind of vetting of, what that situation would mean.
There would be, and especially if there was an industrial use coming in near existing residential. If there were a residential use coming in next to an existing industrial, that could look a little bit different. But yes, there are standards in place to evaluate that.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that out of the air. Thank you, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, for indulging me. I just wanted to ask that question since we had a member of the audience who was posing that question.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other questions, colleagues? Then Commissioner Shattuck McNally, would you start off the conversation, please?
Sure. And Commissioner Stevens, I appreciate your question. That was something that was in the back of my mind. But I remember all of our conversations we had during this process, because we've been talking about this, and I knew this was something we had thought about and talked about before, and I knew it was, we all have concerns about making sure environmental justice and folks are not living near to conditions they would have challenges to experience, and also to mitigate or get away from. So I appreciate that. First, I just want to thank my colleagues for our work and our collaboration together on trying to solve our housing needs in our community. It's quite a challenge. As we just came back from the Colorado Counties Incorporated, we certainly heard from others who were really trying to be very innovative and creative and using every tool in the toolbox for even middle income housing. And we heard some counties had some really innovative things and still just so close to not getting it solved, even though they got every other hoop jumped and every other idea exhausted. So I really feel fortunate that we have unanimously and strongly supported and supported staff, including Aaliyah Rodriguez and our community planning and all of you here in this room and online listening that have been very instrumental in helping us work towards this goal. And I appreciate the Planning Commission listening and giving some honest feedback and really being participants. And I want to thank them too for the conversations we've had together as a board and a Planning Commission. So I want to make sure they understand I value their input and their feedback, because it has been helpful, and I understand some of the concerns. I do look at the backgrounds and purposes and going towards this process, and I think really this hits right on the nail on the head with the hammer of our needs for housing. That hammer of housing needs and challenges is pretty heavy, and certainly it addresses the housing needs portion and the housing diversity portion. It's certainly, I think, exactly what we need and how we need to adjust having this legislative rezoning process. And I think that we need to protect and preserve our already naturally occurring affordable housing. And we have dozens of parks here in Larimer County that we need to maintain and preserve and protect, and also look towards increasing community unity and protections and conditions. And I think our staff and community development and even our code compliance department and building department have worked very hard to work together with the residents to help improve water quality. And we have supported those efforts in helping walk through code violations. So I think, or helping them understand the processes. So I think having this formal process and this zoning and this doing this action today is a long time coming, very needed, and very appropriate for the conditions and needs we have in our communities and our county. So I feel this meets all of the needed requirements for us to move forward, and I strongly support this process and this I guess it's an application from us. That feels a little weird. It's an application from us, but I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Yes, me too. I support the motion. A couple of comments that I think are relevant, and then perhaps a suggestion moving forward. I appreciate the reference to our 2019 comprehensive master plan. One of the focus areas was housing, and one of the key takeaways there was the idea of a diversity of housing options. We know that manufactured housing communities, 33 of them being in the county and some in the growth management area, it's an organic, I don't know what the term you used, alternative, natural, organic, the type of unsubsidized housing that meets the needs of a lot of folks. So it's important that we do what is appropriate to preserve that type of housing stock. I think in some of the comments that you all shared, and I'm glad you had different discussions with park owners and advocates, MIVOS and folks like that. I think one number that was put out there, that if there are 33 communities, and maybe depending on how many folks live there, there could be like 5,000 people that are living in these types of homes. So it is a big deal and it's important. So I wanted to share that. And my suggestion moving forward is, and I think you've already thought of this, and that is, as we get to phase 2 and consider legislative voluntary rezoning, I'm hoping that we can come up with ideas or incentives that would cause the park owners, what's in it for them if they decide to protect their investment and provide the housing for folks. What's in it for them to be able to do that, perhaps on a voluntary basis, or perhaps recognize the value of being legislatively zoned into that. And it was helpful from Samantha and others to see that the city, I guess, ultimately didn't do there were 9 parks or communities, and they went through a process and determined some were not appropriate, perhaps. So thank you. Support this effort. Look forward to phase 2. I'm sure it'll probably be a bit more spirited than tonight. And I certainly appreciate Tiffin, I believe, that came out and provided some good insights there. And it's an interesting map. So
Commissioner?
I'm done.
Commissioner?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just didn't know if we wanted to give Commissioner Stevens a chance to make her
Did you not
comments and
deliberate?
deliberation. Thank you.
Sorry about. Oh gosh.
That's okay. I asked a question, and it may have sounded like I was deliberating. So no worries. Thank you, Commissioner Shannon McNally. I do want to thank staff for all the outreach that you did with owners and residents. That was a big piece, because I think there were a lot of concerns expressed about how are they going to feel about it. Certainly residents were supportive. Some owners were, just wanted more information, not necessarily skeptical or especially about the just adopting the zoning district, which is an entirely different piece than any kind of legislative rezoning that we might contemplate. I guess, I agree with Commissioner Shattuck McNally. This is our only naturally occurring affordable housing in the county, and so preserving it is really important. We know with all the housing measures that have been come across at the state level that preservation is just as important as creating new units, because we do not want people to be displaced, and what displacement looks like is homelessness. And so that is something we do not want to have any further people, especially families and people who are older, who are often, have no other choices but to live in mobile home parks. When we displace those people, we are displacing some of the most vulnerable residents in our community. So this zoning district addresses that. It may not address affordability directly, but in many ways, it is protecting people who have nowhere else to go. And I do think that it provides enough flexibility for park owners. It encourages a primary use. It's not that it can't be sold. It's not that it can't be sold, and there could be, a change in zoning. But for the most part, it preserves them as they exist. Now, one thing I want to say is these parks are very lucrative, and the ones that have been sold for tens of millions of dollars, so some close to $100 million, not quite there, but some pretty close. People want them as parks often. It used to be the case that people did want to redevelop them into commercial, and now, because it's a rent that you can count on every single month that can be increased, they have become very, very lucrative. In fact, traded in sort of Wall Street kind of ways, traded by big firms. Sometimes the owners are not individual mom and pops, and sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're big kind of conglomerates. So the idea that we're restricting their, I don't see this as any kind of restriction, is all I'm saying. And I do want to, mention that this is just adopting the zoning district, but it was not intended to be punitive in any kind of way. It really is meant to be protective. And I agree with Commissioner Kafalis in saying that, we may not end up, doing legislative zoning. We may not end up legislatively zoning all of them. I think it's important to kind of look at the case-by-case basis. And I was part of Fort Collins City Council when we adopted this at the end of 2020. It's probably one of the last things I did. I think we were all on Zoom when we did it. But it's been successful in the city of Fort Collins, and it's given residents some peace of mind to know that they, for the most part, those parks will stay as parks, and they can keep their homes there. And I think that piece is really important. There hasn't been a lot of pushback, like I said, partly because of the value of these parks remaining as parks for the owners. So very supportive. Sorry to take so long to wrap that up, but I just think it's important that the public understands the kind of discussions we had as we wrestled with whether to do this and how to do this. So definitely support this zoning district.
Thanks, Commissioner. So let's go to the motion. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, I think it's on the screen.
Yes, it is. Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the adoption of the Manufactured Housing Park Preservation Zoning District File Number 24-CODE 0279.
Thank you, Commissioner. Proper motion. Any further discussion? I actually have a quick comment based on, and that is, it seems to me as we're in phase two, one of the criteria that we should be thinking about criterion is the ownership of these parks. There are some that are locally owned. There are some that are, as the commissioner indicated, investor-owned, corporate owners from out of state, and I think that should be a consideration. Thank you. Motion on before us. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I believe that passes 3-0. Thank you all. Very well. Well done. Thanks for talking into the mic, Samantha. Okay, we're moving right along here. Oh, let's see. Next item is Larimer County Water Master Plan, file number 24-code 0280. And thank you for coming. Have a nice evening. Danielle, you're on a roll.
Thank you so much. Okay, it says my screen sharing is paused. Let me stop share and reshare. Try that again. Thought I could do it in one full swoop. Share.
Danielle.
Okay. Well, thank you, commissioners. I'll work a little bit better about speaking close to the mic as well. I really appreciate you all being here today and listening to the adoption draft of the Water Master Plan. I've come to you quite a few times now. Leslie and I both have. My name is Danielle Rymanis. I've coordinated the Water Master Plan for the last year and a half or so, and I'm joined in the audience with Leslie Ellis, the Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources, who is really the project sponsor. Ultimately, this project came on board from the three commissioners through the comprehensive plan, through the strategic plan, et cetera. I'm going to breeze through these slides. I've shown you them quite a few times. I brought it to Planning Commission, so for anyone online or watching this recording, if you are interested in a further kind of in-depth presentation, the November 20th, 24 Planning Commission hearing has these same slides and going into a little more depth on them. But ultimately, the Water Master Plan, we're here to kind of outline the county's role as it relates to water conservation, watershed health, mitigating hazards, and we've really utilized a lot of partners and stakeholders to the effort in the last year. If adopted, the Water Master Plan will become an element of the comprehensive plan. I've shown this roadmap before. I think it's just an excellent kind of graphic to show where we've been in that from about July, August, September of last year to now, December 9th. We've engaged dozens of stakeholders, had dozens of meetings, presented at various conferences, kind of small conferences and whatnot. We attended a Growing Water Smart workshop. So it's just been about a year effort of a lot of work. It's paid off. The Larimer County Water Master Plan can be found online, larimer.gov/planning/water. There is a direct link to both the plan, the adoption draft of the plan, as well as the appendices. Please note, the adoption draft is still only the adoption draft. The final draft will come out kind of after today. This is all pending any typos that were found. I want to make note that we're waiting for all the kind of typos and minor wordsmithing to come through before we targeted them all at once. There's 5 chapters within the plan. Why are we doing it? What are we up against? What do we intend to kind of do out of this? Where? And then the meat of it all is what are we going to do about it, the strategies. There's 10 strategies that I'm not going to go through. I do want to note that from our work session that we had November 18th with the Board of County Commissioners, we don't intend to change any of the timeframes per se of the plans. There's some conversation there if we need, but as the implementation plan kind of comes out and what we're going to do, some strategies, the ones denoted with an asterisk, will be prioritized more than some of the others. So that's to integrate the water plan as it relates to the county plans, the upcoming comprehensive plan update, water security or water adequacy, protecting water to promote a viable ag economy, and then similar to our last discussion item, address water quality and water efficiency in disproportionately impacted communities, which tend to be manufactured housing parks. So those 4 strategies are going to be prioritized more than some of the others per recommendation. So on Wednesday, November 20th, we did take this to a Planning Commission hearing. It was adopted unanimously. And for those that don't know, the Water Master Plan is actually adopted by Planning Commission and approved by the Board of County Commissioners. So it has already been adopted, but we do kind of need to make this approval as the commissioners are going to be the ones kind of leading this project onwards. The motion that was made by Commissioner Barrick was, I'll move that the Planning Commission adopt the Water Master Plan file number 24-CODE0280 as proposed. So what's really important is the as proposed piece and kind of what we are presenting here today. Today is the land use hearing for approval. The document is on the screen, and there's a link for anyone that's interested in viewing it and reading through the website. So with that, I just appreciate your time, your effort towards this, your passion and care about water. It's contagious, and I really think that this plan highlights and summarizes our intentions pretty darn well. And here is the suggested motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Colleagues, do you have any questions for Danielle? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Danielle, first, I mean, it just Leslie, and you well done and the engagement and getting out, and just appreciate that so much. So my question from that comment is, we have a lot of stakeholders and partners that have been involved all along. I'm wondering, I just pulled this out of my packet so I can have a hard copy, because I'm not sure we all have a hard copy. But I'm wondering about some of those really big stakeholders and partners, if we're going to be getting them a hard copy just for them to have. And I'm just curious about that and what that looks like, helping get the word out or re-engaging our partners now that it's kind of official and finalized. Just curious.
Yeah, I can kind of start with where I was thinking of that, and then I'd love for Leslie to join in with anything. I think it's important to continue this conversation. I'll note with the hard copies, one of our intentions was not to just print something that sits on a shelf. However, the idea of keeping them up to date, I personally, similar to the comprehensive plan, I would like to see a bounded kind of version that can live, and so that's something that can be kind of sent out. Luckily, and just as a quick note, some members of Northern Water have accepted to kind of champion some climate smart, future ready efforts. So I think that naturally some of those partnerships are kind of bonded now as we move forward, and that was the intention. So more than just a plan, more than just pieces of paper, what are the partnerships that were created and how are those going to strengthen? But as for getting that message out and physical copies, I don't know if Leslie wants to add on to anything.
No, I think that's a great question and a good answer. And what we do a lot of times these days is print certain numbers of these types of plans and reach out and see who wants them, because a lot of people read things online these days. So we'll have to look at our budget and see what we can do in terms of printing hard copies, and then do adequate numbers for the ones who want it. So, but I think that's a great suggestion. And Danielle's done a really phenomenal job of keeping them all in the loop too, and letting them know about the hearings, letting them know about the events that are happening, and just communicating in general. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just want to commend you both for just an excellent and extraordinary job, and want to thank all of our partners and any stakeholder involved. It's been a very inspiring process. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens, any questions?
I do have one question. Will the additional strategies considered but not selected be also included in a bound copy? I didn't know if that appendix or that was more for, kind of internal use, or what did that look like?
That's an interesting question. I actually really appreciate that. So the notion with the appendices was technical reference, mainly for internal staff, but it is open to the public, anyone who can view it, but who's going to go through and read 200 pages. So if we think that information, I think it's Appendix D or C, if that's what is fruitful, then we can pull that out per se, and it still lives in the appendices, but we can still pull that out, put it on the website or something of this sort. So I think if there is intention to keep those in the back of mind and not just live in appendices, that can happen.
I mean, it is interesting, obviously water encompasses so much of our lives, and especially in the West. We could have gone in a lot of different directions. I mean, I think that's what that speaks to, is that we can't necessarily address everything with this plan. We have thought about this, though, and I think I like that piece of, this is something that we've certainly given some thought to, and we didn't feel like it rose to the top, but it's still something that's on our mind, and we know it's on the community's mind. I don't think it's bad to let it live online. I don't think I'd put it in any kind of bound copy, but it was just a kind of a curious piece, to think about. Our director of CPERS might want to look like.
I don't know that I can add much value. I think that's a good perspective, and our anticipation would be that it probably will live online, and all of this will be online for, as long as the life of the plan. So I don't foresee it going anywhere, and it would be a resource available. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I have one question, and then we want to see if anyone online wishes to offer public comment. And I'm probably okay with this version. I'll just, I just want to save paper if we can. But my question is this. Have you considered, this has been a pretty amazing process, very inclusive process as best as we can. Actually, I have two questions. So, continuing that thought, have you all considered how we can proactively present this to the community as far as what we've accomplished? One suggestion that comes to mind is the Water Education Colorado. They put out freshwater news, and I wonder if this process that we've been through and the deliverables, whether that might be something they would be interested in doing a story about. So I offer that as a suggestion, and I'm wondering, the question attached to that is, what are you all thinking once we get the dust settles in terms of getting the word out, proactively that good work has been done here? Do you have some thoughts on that, Danielle?
Yeah, I do, and I'm actually going to tie it back to one of our strategies, which is it's the clearinghouse, the resources, the education piece. That's an entire strategy, is to get this, communicate this to the public and to leaders alike. Specifics about the plan, we haven't really had intention to maybe share the story of the plan, but we talked about maybe creating a video at that work session that was a few weeks ago, working with the Fort Collins TV to get that live. There could be a lot of work on just spreading the word, like through Freshwater Magazine, like you said. There's a few other magazines I know of, Headwaters, that could paint the story of the water plan. However, sharing our successes and trying to get buy-in from members of the public and having them learn what they can do, I think that strategy is kind of outlined in the plan and it by itself. Maybe it's something like Larimer County continues their water education series that was presented last year. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, and I feel that the plan sets that up for success.
And I agree, and I guess all I'm suggesting is, as a one-off, do we reach out to groups like Water Education Colorado to do a story about this, and then our water education. I mean, that's one of the key objectives of this plan, is to work on, the county helping to provide leadership on educating people about all these issues. I just think it would be really a good way to get the word out, and lessons learned, and how do we replicate this in places where it might need to be replicated.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think that's a fantastic point.
Well,
make note of it.
And I think I'll pause there. My question is more related to public comment. So let's see. Anything else, colleagues? Then Christina, I don't believe we have anyone in person. Christina, anybody online?
Yes, if there's any attendees online that would like to speak on this case, if you could please use the raise hand function now, please. There are no hands raised.
Thank you. And before we move on and close public comment, Danielle, I noticed that there was an email from a constituent regarding water change cases. I've not had a chance to look at that, and I believe you've responded. Could you speak to that a little bit, what that person was raising and what your thoughts are on that one?
Yeah, it's a quite technical question from this individual. Change cases are, and when it comes to water rights, the water right is associated with a certain type of use. The two types of uses, generally speaking, are municipal and agriculture. And so if you want to go from municipal to agriculture or vice versa, you have to go through water court to update that. And so that's called a change case. You change the use of that water right. And so I think what that email was kind of getting at was, as agriculture sells off their water and municipalities buy it, how many, change cases are kind of involved in that situation? How many of these water rights are turning from agriculture to municipal use? Are there numbers? Is that something we can track? And my response was, we haven't done that through this process. There was some other water rights data that we looked at, but we didn't specifically look at change cases. But there's that strategy that relates to agriculture, and I think that could be set a baseline for what's the trajectory, what are the trends of water rights and their use.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That helps explain that exchange that you all had. And it seems to me one of our categories is water rights, and it may make sense to further understand data sets that might help shed some light on water change cases and how that's relevant perhaps to water that's being used for agricultural purposes that could be switched over to municipal perhaps. Thank you. So we'll close public comment. Let's see if there are any more questions. If not, well, do my colleagues have, you guys have questions? Okay, then let's begin the closing comments. Let's see, Commissioner Stevens, you have any wisdom here for us?
I'll try.
Okay.
So there again, I appreciate all the work that staff did on this and really engaging so many members of the community, although unfortunately none of them are here to speak to this today. I want to thank the Planning Commission as well for their work on this. There again, this is a document that we really had really deep conversations about, so I'm really happy at the place it's in. We've discussed it numerous times, so I feel like my comments will be repetitive here, but I just appreciate the thoughtfulness, and I really like that it's not just a plan that's going to sit on the shelf, because we do have some real action items. We have suggestions in the plan of who potential partners would be. We have even funding opportunities listed out. So I think it's really comprehensive in the way that it's saying, this is how we can make some of this work. It's a great document for our community because I think it really provides some protections for our community with regard to water quality and protecting our watersheds and protecting ag land. But it's also going to really help us make better decisions as decision makers and policymakers in our county. Really tying water to some of our land use planning is really crucial, especially as we look at, long-term droughts and climate issues. So I think this is a great document. I will be supporting it today and just thank everyone who was involved with it. And it's a living document, so let's kind of keep looking at it and seeing how we can, make sure that we're achieving our goals, but, and adding new portions when we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, again, will repeat, this has been really a amazing process to be a part of, and I feel very fortunate to have this happen while I'm commissioner. I took the Larimer Water Leaders Program back at, I think it started in 2019 or 2020, I don't remember, but and certainly having someone who leases water, who had access to water, and who does a little bit of hobby farming, we call it now. It's something that I've learned. A lot of my water knowledge in the beginning was through the hard way, learning lessons learned. And so being part of that class and that course for so many months, and then attending the Water Congress and speaking to them as a part of the Forest Health Council, and the work that we've done as a county and looking at watersheds, and there's just a lot to this whole water thing that we live with, and water is life, and water is the lifeblood, and trying to help everyone understand when you turn on your faucet, there's a lot that happened way before that, and there's lots of laws and policies and history and challenges, and a lot more to come, as we even had earlier today with some water providers having moratoriums on taps and things. So I first have to just say, again, I commend you all for a great job. The stakeholders and the engagement from a lot of those stakeholders were really critical and crucial, because we are not a water provider, but I think it's 124 water providers in Larimer County, which I still find just fascinating. And this has to be a community master plan that we engage in this together. And I think this has certainly been a community and commissioner-driven document and energy. And I just appreciate staff's enthusiasm and engagement as well, and includes everyone in the room and so many other folks who are not presently here, or maybe they're listening online. I think I appreciate a lot about this master water plan is there's still, from a lot of people, don't understand what a watershed is and why that's so important. And we have two damaged watersheds, two major watersheds that are damaged. And Danielle, I know you're an expert on the snowpack melting in unshaded areas, and I just still, that keeps me up at night sometimes thinking about generations to come and how that has dramatically changed our peak flows and the conditions in two of our major rivers and watersheds, which is really, again, like I said, water is their lifeblood. So I wanted to say first, I think there's some very important education in this, as well as opportunities to further educate and develop this more as we go forward. And I do appreciate listening to my feedback about the area mega fires and severe fires. That makes a huge difference between, a beneficial fire from a, very extreme severe mega fire, and those conditions really change the damage and long-term consequences for watersheds and the quality of our water. And everyone is downstream from these watersheds, and that means, everyone, no one, all the towns and stuff, and no one is immune from how important this plan is, in my opinion. So I'm glad that we have this. I'm glad we talked about why we did this and the journey. And I think there is, as Danielle said, we're not just making a plan to say, hey, we checked the box, we're doing this. There's actually lots of actionable things here. And as my commitment as a commissioner, I'm going to figure out how we can fund that and get some of these things done. Because we can sit here and talk about, we support this, but we've got to figure out some funding, and I'm working on that, as you know, because the groundwater and some of these other plans and the critical watershed protections and mitigation efforts are going to take funding and energy, and so that is, I just wanted to state that out loud, that's a priority of mine, and I'm thinking it's something we really need to be focused on as well, because now that we have some good strategies and some important comments and points in here, it's something that we need to, time like the present, get moving on. So I think really having this in the strategic plan and outlined in the comprehensive plan, as I was very involved with that as a resident back in 2019, and attended several of those meetings and hung out with some wonky young farmers. I'll never forget them and their engagement with me. I learned a lot about soil health from those young men and women who always came in to meetings with dust all over and mud on their boots, and I just always impressed their level of knowledge that they imparted on me, especially about soil health at that time. So I think, this is really important. I'll even quote some of this from the strategic plan about improving our long-term planning for water supply and unincorporated areas, and to promote water sharing strategies to preserve our agricultural industry and heritage, and to sustain our water supplies, because we really, when we say of the adequate water for approval of some of these things that come before us, I'm not sure anymore. I am confident that we can say that there might be adequate water. And I just really wanted, this is a mission of mine as well, I just want to support all the conservation, stewardship, and resiliency of, our natural and built environments, because we're in a very unique and tenuous time, and I think this is a very proactive step, but not unless we take these strategies and really increase this regional effectiveness and water use across all of our urban and unincorporated agricultural and wild spaces. And there's a lot of needs, and we have to make sure that we're focusing on balancing that. So I am couldn't be more proud of the work that you've all done, and just thankful for this plan, and looking forward to next year getting to work. So thank you all, and I will be supporting this approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I too will support the motion. I think one of the takeaways, I agree with my colleagues, one of the takeaways is we need to look at how we can fund some of these action items. So that's an area of focus that we should all put our heads together and look at what kind of resources are out there. The only other thing I'll mention is I want to do a bit of a shout out for our For Leslie Ellis, our Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources Service Area Director. I think when we talked about this a little bit a couple of years back, the idea of integrating land and water use and helping this to guide how we grow in a smart way, manage growth, given that the county is one of the faster growing counties, I think it's really important. So a big shout out for Leslie, and I'm glad her name is on the little report or the plan. So that's all I have. Commissioner Stevens, I believe it's your turn, I think.
I think that's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the adoption of the Water Master Plan File Number 24, Code 0280, to become an element of the Larimer County Comprehensive Plan as proposed.
Thanks, Commissioner. That's a lovely and proper motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay, 3-0. I believe we have concluded our business for the afternoon land use hearing. We will return, I believe, at 6:30 p.m. Thank you all. Thank you, Cassidy.